You don't look like someone who belongs in this seat. The words cut through the low hum of the morning express like a slap. It was 7:45 a.m., and the Northeast Corridor's high-speed Acela was just seconds from departure, gliding out of New York's Penn Station toward Washington, D.C. The business-class car was quiet, polished, until now. Aaliyah Carter, 38, fit, sharp-featured, and dressed in a slate-gray pantsuit that looked straight off a Fifth Avenue rack, didn't look up right away. Her leather carry-on was tucked neatly under the seat in front of her. A slim, rose-gold laptop rested on the tray table. She'd been reviewing a proposal worth more than some of these passengers' annual salaries. The man blocking the aisle, Gregory Hale, mid-50s, khakis wrinkled, polo shirt already rumpled, was staring down at her like she was a trespasser. He gripped a crumpled ticket in one hand, a to-go coffee in the other. The coffee was shaking slightly, but not from the train's movement. "That's my seat," he said, loud enough for half the car to hear. His tone carried the kind of certainty that didn't come from fact, but from a lifetime of never being questioned. Aaliyah glanced up slowly, her eyes calm but unreadable, the kind of look that made you wonder if she was deciding whether to answer, or to let you dig your own grave. Across the aisle, a young woman with a camera phone, Elena Morales, a 23-year-old media student, froze mid-scroll. She'd seen this scene before. Millions had. The setup was always the same. Someone in power assuming they could decide who belonged where. Elena's thumb hovered over the Go Live button. The air in the car shifted. A couple of passengers looked over their newspapers. Someone in the back cleared their throat. The conductor hadn't even scanned tickets yet, but already the tension was sharp enough to slice. Gregory leaned in just slightly. "Come on, lady. Let's not make a scene." Aaliyah's fingers stayed on the edge of her laptop, her voice steady when it finally came. "You already did." And that, right there, was the moment Elena hit live. Gregory's voice rose a notch, carrying past the rows of leather seats. "I don't know how you ended up here, but this is my seat. I paid for it. Business class, 1A. That means something." He let the words hang there, like they were supposed to explain everything, supposed to make her move. Aaliyah didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She just kept her gaze level, the same gaze she'd used in boardrooms when a six-figure deal was on the line. The kind of gaze that made grown executives shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Across the aisle, Elena's phone was already streaming. A small red dot pulsed on her screen, the viewer count climbing from 3 to 27 to 54 in under a minute. Comments were popping up in real time. "Here we go again. This about to be another viral moment." Gregory stepped closer, blocking the aisle entirely now. "Look, lady, I'm sure you're nice and all, but maybe you wandered into the wrong car. First class is that way." He jabbed a thumb over his shoulder toward the rear of the train, like he was doing her a favor. Aaliyah's lips pressed into the faintest of smiles. "First class is behind us, actually. This is business class. And I'm exactly where I belong." A couple of passengers exchanged glances. The murmurs started, low at first, then picking up. Somebody muttered, "Man, just let the conductor handle it." But Gregory wasn't letting go. "You can't just sit wherever you feel like. There are rules." His tone was dripping with the kind of authority people assumed they had when the system had always bent in their favor. Elena tilted her phone, catching Aaliyah's composed posture against Gregory's looming frame. The contrast was striking, calm against chaos. "I'm not here for an argument," Aaliyah said evenly. "I'm here to ride this train to D.C. That only seemed to irritate him more. "Don't get smart with me." His voice carried now, loud enough that a conductor 2 cars down could probably hear. From the far end, a man in a navy blazer and cap, the senior conductor, began making his way toward them, scanning tickets as he moved. The murmurs in the car quieted to a buzz of anticipation. Gregory crossed his arms, smirking like the cavalry had just arrived for him. Finally. Let's get this sorted out. Elena's viewer count jumped past 120. In the comment feed, someone typed, "Watch, the conductor's gonna side with him without even asking questions." And for the first time, Aaliyah allowed herself a single thought. Let's see how far this goes. The senior conductor reached their row, his polished black shoes clicking against the aisle. His name tag read Michael Owens, and the way he glanced between Gregory and Aaliyah said more than words ever could. "What seems to be the issue here?" Michael asked, his tone polite but carrying that brisk authority of someone who deals with problems for a living. Gregory jumped in before Aaliyah could speak. Yeah, this lady's in my seat, 1A. I paid for it months ago. Can you please handle this so we can all get going? Michael nodded slowly, then turned, not to Gregory, but to Aaliyah. Ma'am, may I see your ticket? The emphasis on ma'am was courteous enough, but the order of operations was clear. He was asking her to prove she belonged. Not Gregory. Not the man making the accusation. Aaliyah's brow lifted just slightly. Wouldn't you like to see both tickets? She asked, her voice calm but deliberate. Michael gave a tight smile, the kind you give when you're trying to move things along without actually addressing the imbalance. Let's start with yours. Gregory folded his arms, leaning back like the verdict was already in his favor. This'll be quick. From the other side of the aisle, Elena's phone caught everything. The angle perfect, the audio crisp. Comments poured in. Why's he only asking her? Classic bias. Watch this. Aaliyah took her time, sliding her hand into the inside pocket of her blazer. Interesting, she murmured. That you'd begin with me. She pulled out her ticket, holding it between two manicured fingers, but she didn't hand it over just yet. Michael cleared his throat. Ma'am, I need to confirm your seat. Before Aaliyah could respond, Gregory spoke again, louder this time. It's obvious she's in the wrong car. Just put her where she belongs. The phrase, where she belongs, hung in the air like a bad smell. Several passengers shifted uncomfortably. Elena's viewer count spiked to over 300. Finally, Aaliyah passed the ticket to Michael. He scanned it quickly, his eyes flicking over the details. A pause. Then, a faint crease appeared between his brows. Gregory leaned in. See. Not her seat, right? But Michael didn't answer immediately. Instead, he adjusted his cap and glanced toward the front of the car, as if buying himself a moment. Something on that ticket clearly didn't fit the narrative Gregory was selling. And in that silence, the live stream chat exploded. Wait for it. This is about to flip. Aaliyah sat back, her expression unreadable. She'd seen this play out before. The real question was, how long would it take for everyone else to catch up? Michael's pause stretched just a little too long, and the tension in the car tightened like a drawn bowstring. Then, in a measured voice he said, This ticket shows, seat 1A. Gregory's face twitched. What? Let me see that. Michael ignored him, his eyes running over the rest of the print. There, at the very top, in embossed gold lettering, were the words Diamond Rail Executive Member. Beneath it, Priority Boarding, Lifetime Status. Elena tilted her phone to catch it, zooming in just enough for her growing audience to see. The chat went wild. Whoa, that's like top tier. Dude, she's not just a passenger, she's elite. Gregory, unwilling to let go, gave a short laugh. Probably upgraded last minute. Those perks don't mean anything unless you've earned them. Aaliyah arched an eyebrow, the faintest smile at the corner of her lips. Earned them? She repeated softly, like she was testing the weight of the words. She reached into the side pocket of her leather carry-on and pulled out a slim, navy folder with a subtle silver crest on the front. She set it on the tray table, flipped it open, and slid a thick, cream-colored envelope toward Michael. The return address at the top read, The White House, Office of Economic Initiatives. Gregory blinked. What is this? Michael hesitated before lifting the letter out. The seal was real. The signature at the bottom, unmistakable. It was a formal invitation to Aaliyah Carter, Chief Executive Officer of Carter Global Strategies, to attend a private economic roundtable in Washington, D.C. that same afternoon. She's got a meeting at the White House? A man in row 2 whispered, just loud enough for it to carry. Elena's livestream chat exploded. OMG, she's important. Greg about to eat his words. The viewer count jumped past 700. Aaliyah sat back, her eyes never leaving Gregory. I didn't wander into this seat, Mr. Hale. I was in it before you even boarded. Michael cleared his throat, suddenly less certain of himself. It appears there's been some confusion. Gregory tried to recover. Well, maybe it's a double booking. Still doesn't mean. It means, Aaliyah cut in, her voice still calm but carrying an edge now. You assumed you could decide who belonged here without any facts. And that assumption is exactly why this conversation is happening in front of an audience. Elena's chat lit up again. Preach. He's done for. Keep rolling, don't stop the live. The power dynamic had shifted. Not fully. Not yet. But for the first time since Gregory opened his mouth, he looked like a man who might not win this fight. Gregory's smirk wavered, but he still wasn't ready to back down. All right, so you've got some fancy membership and a letter. That doesn't prove you deserve. It proves, Aaliyah said, cutting him off with the precision of a scalpel, that you don't know who you're talking to. The car went quiet. Even the faint rhythm of the train on the tracks seemed to fade for a beat. Aaliyah reached for the navy folder again, sliding out a single sheet of thick, watermarked paper. The header read National Express Rail Holdings, Board of Directors. Beneath it, her name was listed in bold, Aaliyah Carter, Chairwoman. Michael's eyes widened. You're the chairwoman of… Yes, Aaliyah said, her tone even. The company that owns and operates this train, this route, and every ticket sold on it. The silence broke with a collective intake of breath. Someone in row 3 whispered, "Holy," but caught themselves mid-word. Gregory laughed, but it was the kind of laugh people use when they're trying to hold on to control they've already lost. "You expect me to believe that?" "You don't have to believe it," Aaliyah replied smoothly. "It's a matter of public record. You can check the corporate filings, or," she gestured lightly toward Elena's phone, "wait until this live stream reaches the people who already know my name." Elena tilted her camera, making sure the document and Aaliyah's title were in full frame. The chat exploded. "OMG, she owns the train. Greg about to melt. This is better than Netflix." The viewer count surged past 1,200. Michael swallowed hard. "Miss Carter, I wasn't aware you were aboard today." "That's the point," she said, locking eyes with him. "I travel unannounced to see how passengers are treated, all passengers. What I've seen this morning is exactly why these trips matter." Gregory's face flushed deep red. "Look, I didn't mean anything personal." "You meant exactly what you said," Aaliyah interrupted, her voice still calm but impossible to ignore. "And now everyone here, and everyone watching, knows it." Somewhere toward the back of the car, a passenger clapped once, sharply. It wasn't applause, not yet. But it was a signal. The tide had turned. Michael cleared his throat again. "Miss Carter, don't apologize to me," Aaliyah said, leaning back in her seat. "Not yet. We still have business to address." Gregory shifted uncomfortably, for the first time looking like he wanted the conversation to end. But Aaliyah wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Gregory's eyes darted from Aaliyah's calm expression to the embossed lettering on that board document, as if maybe, just maybe, he could still find a crack in her story. But the room, or rather the train car, had shifted. He wasn't steering this moment anymore. Aaliyah leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the armrests, her posture relaxed but her presence commanding. "Mr. Hale," she began, her voice low enough to draw people in but firm enough to carry across the car. "You've been operating under the assumption that this was your arena to control. It's not. This is my arena. My rules." Gregory gave a dry laugh. "Your rules? You can't just." "Yes, I can," she cut in, her words slicing clean through his interruption. "When you own 60% of National Express Rail Holdings, you tend to have that authority." Elena's live stream viewers erupted in the chat. "Game over. She's wrecking him," without raising her voice. "Greg better find the quiet car real fast." Michael, the conductor, shifted his weight uncomfortably. "Miss Carter, if I may." "You may listen," she replied, her eyes locking on him, "and learn. Because what's happened here isn't just about a seat. It's about the reflex to believe one passenger over another based on nothing but surface assumptions." She turned her gaze back to Gregory. "You saw me, and in less than 5 seconds, you decided I couldn't possibly belong here. You tried to push me out of a seat I rightfully hold. And when the authority figure arrived, you expected him to back you up without question. And he did, at first." Gregory opened his mouth, but no words came out. "Now," Aaliyah continued, "here's where we flip the board. From this point forward, you're not the one dictating what happens next. I am. And this won't be resolved by simply walking away. There will be consequences, because if there aren't, nothing changes." The train swayed gently as it sped south, but inside the car, no one moved. Eyes stayed fixed on Aaliyah, as if afraid they might miss the next blow. "Mr. Hale, you will be reassigned to another seat, one that reflects the respect you've shown here today." she said, her voice calm, but the implication razor-sharp. Gregory's jaw tightened. You can't do that. Aaliyah smiled faintly, the kind of smile a chess player gives right before the checkmate piece lands. I already have. Gregory froze in his seat, caught between disbelief and a slow, creeping awareness that the ground under him had shifted for good. The murmurs in the car had gone quiet again, replaced by a charged silence that made every word feel heavier. Aaliyah let that silence hang for a beat before speaking. Mr. Hale, I'm going to address you first. You made 3 critical choices this morning, none of them accidental. First, you assumed I didn't belong here before you even looked at my ticket. Second, you used your voice, your presence, to try and force me out of my seat. Third, when given the opportunity to reconsider, you doubled down. Gregory's mouth twitched. I wasn't thinking about it like that. That's the problem, Aaliyah said evenly. You weren't thinking. You were reacting, based on a set of assumptions you've probably never questioned. She turned her attention to Michael, the conductor. And you, Mr. Owens, when you arrived, who did you ask for proof first? Michael's lips parted, but no sound came out. He glanced down at his notepad as if the answer might be hiding there. You went to the person being accused, not the one making the accusation, Aaliyah continued. That's not neutral. That's bias, even if you didn't intend it. And intent doesn't erase impact. Several passengers shifted in their seats, uncomfortable but unable to look away. Elena's live stream comments poured in. She's teaching in real time. This is how you handle it. Taking notes. Aaliyah's tone never rose, but it carried the weight of someone who'd had this conversation too many times before. This isn't about punishing for the sake of punishing. It's about recognizing patterns. The pattern is that people who look like me are asked to prove themselves first. We're questioned, doubted, challenged, before a single fact is checked. Gregory's gaze dropped to the floor. Michael's shoulders sagged slightly. This is your chance, Aaliyah said, looking between them, to decide whether this moment changes you, or whether you walk away and pretend it never happened. A beat of silence. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the car, a passenger spoke softly but clearly. She's right. The words seemed to unlock something. A few others nodded. One man in a suit muttered, "Makes you think." Aaliyah leaned back, her point made. We're not done here. But now you both understand, we're not just talking about a seat anymore. Aaliyah let her gaze sweep the length of the business class car, pausing just long enough to meet the eyes of a few passengers who'd been watching in silence. This morning isn't an isolated incident, she began. And it's not the first time I've seen it. Not here, not on a plane, not in a boardroom. The pattern is bigger than the people in this car. Her voice was calm, deliberate, every syllable carrying the kind of weight that made even the hum of the train seem to soften. When bias like this goes unchecked, it becomes part of the system. It stops being about one bad decision and starts being about the rules everyone silently agrees to follow. Rules that decide who gets believed first, who gets questioned first, and who gets treated like they don't belong. Michael shifted uncomfortably in the aisle. Gregory stared at the floor, avoiding eye contact. I don't just ride this train, Aaliyah continued. I oversee the company that owns it. And part of my job, part of my responsibility, is to make sure our service reflects the values we claim to stand for. That means I can't treat this as just a misunderstanding between 2 passengers. I have to treat it as data. And this data says our system still defaults to believing the loudest voice, not the most truthful one. Elena's live stream chat was on fire. She's taking it to corporate level now. This is how change happens. Expose the structure, not just the people. So here's what's going to happen, Aaliyah said, straightening in her seat. When we reach DC, I'll be meeting with our executive operations team. This incident, every second of it, is going to be reviewed. Not just to address the behavior we've seen here, but to evaluate how our conductors are trained, how passenger disputes are handled, and how we measure fairness in real time. She looked directly at Michael. That means more than just customer service training. It means rethinking the checklist you run through the moment you walk into a conflict. It means asking yourself, am I solving the problem, or am I reinforcing the bias? Michael nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. And it won't stop here, she added. If I find that this isn't just a one-off, we'll be rewriting our passenger conduct policy from the ground up. The car was silent. The shift in the air was undeniable, This was no longer a passenger defending her seat. This was the head of the company declaring that the culture itself was about to change. Aaliyah didn't leave her next move for a later meeting. She leaned forward, resting her forearms on the armrests, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the air. Accountability doesn't start next week. It starts now. The business class car went still. The only sound was the steady rhythm of steel wheels on the rails. She turned to Michael first. "Mr. Owens, effective immediately, you're stepping out of service for the rest of this trip. Another conductor will take over this car." Michael's eyes widened. "Ma'am, This isn't a firing," Aaliyah said, her tone unshaken. "It's a pause. You'll be debriefed in DC, and then you'll go through an intensive bias awareness program before you step back onto this floor. If I had to guess, you didn't wake up intending to be unfair today. But you were. And the damage is the same, intent or not." Michael swallowed hard and nodded once. "Understood." Then she turned to Gregory. "Mr. Hale, you'll be reassigned to coach for the remainder of this trip. You'll also be placed on our provisional restricted travel list until a formal review is completed. That means, for now, you will not be able to purchase premium class tickets on any National Express route." Gregory's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. You can't." "I can," Aaliyah said, her voice dropping just a fraction. "And I just did. Consider yourself fortunate, this is only temporary." A ripple of hushed conversation moved through the car. Passengers who had stayed quiet until now were watching with a different kind of attention. Half awe, half realization. Elena's livestream chat blew up. "Yo, she just demoted him mid-trip. That's power and grace. Coach is gonna feel real different for him." Aaliyah let the weight of her words settle before addressing the rest of the car. "This isn't about humiliation. It's about making sure that actions have consequences, so the next time any of us faces a moment like this, we think before we speak, before we judge." She leaned back, signaling the conversation was over. Michael quietly stepped away, pulling out his radio to call in another conductor. Gregory sat stiffly, staring out the window as if the scenery might give him an escape. The train kept moving, but in that car, something had shifted permanently. People had just watched the balance of power flip in real time, and no one was likely to forget it. 6 months later, the Northeast Corridor looked the same on the outside. Steel rails stretching through bustling cities and quiet countryside, but inside National Express Rail, everything had changed. The Carter Protocol, as employees had started calling it, wasn't just a memo in a forgotten binder. It was a living, breathing set of standards that every conductor, attendant, and station agent knew by heart. Complaints of passenger discrimination had dropped by 82%. The number wasn't just a statistic, it represented hundreds of moments that never turned into viral videos, angry letters, or ruined trips. Surveys showed customer satisfaction climbing steadily, especially among first-time business class passengers who said they felt welcomed from the moment they stepped on board. Aaliyah walked through the Washington, D.C. operations hub, her heels clicking softly against the polished tile. Screens displayed live train positions, real-time customer feedback, and a new dashboard tracking interaction quality scores, metrics born directly from the incident in Car 1A. "Morning, Ms. Carter," a young station manager called from behind a desk. "Bias training completion rate, 100%. Every single frontline employee has finished the certification." Aaliyah smiled. "And how's it being applied?" The manager grinned. "Last week in Philadelphia, a passenger dispute got resolved in under 2 minutes. Both sides treated equally, both happy by the end. No assumptions made. Just facts checked and action taken." Meanwhile, Michael Owens, the conductor she'd pulled from service that day, had completed his retraining and now served as a mentor in the program. He'd requested the role himself, saying, "If I can stop even one person from repeating my mistake, it's worth it." And Gregory Hale? He'd been removed from the restricted travel list after completing an accountability program. Word had gotten back to Aaliyah that he'd spoken at a community forum about confronting personal bias. Admitting his seat incident had changed the way he looked at strangers. Elena Morales, the media student with the live stream, had turned her footage into a short documentary for her graduate project. It was now being used in corporate training for multiple industries. Her social media following had quadrupled, and she'd been hired as a digital content consultant. Aaliyah paused at a window overlooking the main platform. A business class train pulled in, and through the glass she saw passengers boarding. Men, women, families, people in suits, people in jeans. No one was being questioned about where they belonged. She exhaled slowly. 6 months ago, that had been the exception. Now, it was becoming the norm. 2 years after the confrontation in Car 1A, Aaliyah Carter's name was no longer just associated with corporate leadership. It had become shorthand for a cultural shift in American transportation. What started as a tense moment between two passengers had grown into a movement that reached far beyond National Express Rail. The Carter Protocol had been adopted by 5 major airlines, 3 national bus carriers, and even a chain of luxury hotels. Industry publications called it the gold standard for equitable customer service. The Department of Transportation had taken notice too. Aaliyah had testified before Congress twice, sharing how bias in customer-facing roles wasn't just a social issue but a financial liability. Her testimony helped shape the Passenger Fairness Act, a federal law requiring all transportation companies to implement anti-bias training, transparent dispute resolution procedures, and public reporting on complaint data. Back at National Express, the numbers spoke for themselves. Repeat business class ticket sales were up 27%, and the company's annual report highlighted customer trust as a key growth driver. In board meetings, executives no longer rolled their eyes when the topic of diversity came up. It was now discussed alongside profit margins and route expansion. Gregory Hale, once the man trying to push her out of her seat, had become an unlikely ally. After completing his accountability program, he volunteered with a nonprofit that educated corporate teams on implicit bias. In interviews, he never downplayed his role in the original incident. "I was wrong," he told a local news anchor. "I assumed I knew who she was before she even spoke. That mistake taught me more than I ever learned in a classroom." Michael Owens had been promoted to Director of Passenger Experience, overseeing a team dedicated to maintaining the Carter Protocol standards. His quarterly reports were now shared at national transit conferences. And Elena Morales? Her graduate documentary, First Class Truth, had won a regional Emmy and was licensed by several Fortune 500 companies for internal training. She had built a career on the back of one instinctive decision, to hit go live when she sensed injustice unfolding. On a crisp autumn morning, Aaliyah stood on the balcony of her DC office, watching a silver train glide into Union Station. Somewhere in that business-class car, she knew, there was a passenger who might have been doubted once, but wouldn't be today. The moment in 1A had become more than a viral video. It was now a blueprint. Looking back, Aaliyah Carter knew the incident in Car 1A had been more than a clash over a seat. It had been a mirror, held up to an entire system. And what it reflected wasn't just about one man's prejudice or one conductor's mistake. It was about how quickly people decide who belongs and who doesn't, and how rarely those decisions are questioned. The lesson wasn't complicated, but it was powerful. Change starts in the smallest moments. It begins when someone chooses to pause before acting on an assumption. It grows when someone speaks up for the person being overlooked or pushed aside. And it lasts when institutions take those moments seriously enough to change the way they operate. Aaliyah often told her leadership team, "We don't measure our culture by how we treat the easiest customers. We measure it by how we treat the ones we're tempted to underestimate." In the 2 years since that morning, she'd seen how one act of standing firm, without shouting, without matching aggression for aggression, could ripple outward into real reform. She hadn't needed to win the argument with volume. She'd won it with facts, presence, and the decision to make it bigger than herself. For the everyday person, the takeaway was clear. You don't have to be a CEO to make an impact. You don't need a title or a controlling stake in a company. What you need is the courage to document, to speak, and to hold the line when someone tries to move you out of your rightful place. Whether that place is a train seat, a meeting room, or any space you've earned. And if you witness it happening to someone else, don't underestimate your role. Elena had been a graduate student with a phone, nothing more. But by hitting go live, she preserved the truth in a way that couldn't be erased or spun. That simple act turned into a chain reaction that changed corporate policy, influenced federal law, and reshaped how thousands of employees approach their jobs. Aaliyah's message to anyone hearing her story was simple. Power doesn't always look like a raised voice or a slammed fist. Sometimes it looks like staying exactly where you are, forcing the world to adjust to your presence instead of you adjusting to its bias. So the next time you see injustice, on a train, in a store, in your workplace, remember 1A. Remember that you can be the reason a harmful pattern stops. And remember that sometimes, the most powerful move is refusing to move at all.